This is Kerfur, a fan-favorite robotic assistant from the game Voices of the Void. It's also absolutely terrible at its job, but video game companions are supposed to help us. So why do people still like this thing? Well, I decided to dig into it, but what I found was rather strange. Kerfur seems to somehow be able to manipulate its players through flirtation, and it's this dynamic I'd like to discuss with you today. So grab a seat and prepare, because Kerfur doesn't just stay like this. Instead, it eventually becomes much creepier. But that's something you'll see at the end. So let's get into it. So what does Kerfur even do? Well, around this game's world, known as the Array, are 24 different satellite dishes. Every so often, one of these servers goes down, and if you want to continue making progress in the game, you either need to travel to these servers yourself or send Kerfur in your place. Now, let's say we're trying to reach this satellite, which for our purposes we'll just call satellite A. Which of these routes do you think gets us there faster? Route A, which follows the clearly visible road, or Route B, going off-road directly through the forest? Technically Route B, right? But let's see which one Kerfur prefers. Okay, seems like it's doing good so far. Okay, never mind. You see, what I didn't tell you was that there's actually a hidden option C, which is to head directly towards the lake before going into the middle of it and drowning yourself. Kerfur's path tracking is legit so bad that the game actually allows you to manually control it from your base to help it get unstuck. And most of the time, this does work. However, in our lake example, all you will see from Kerfur's point of view is some kind of fleshy blob. Because yes, there's also some kind of strange monster in the middle of this lake, but that's something we'll touch on later again. Now, as for why people seemingly disregard all of this and still love Kerfur nonetheless, most state one of the following reasons. That Kerfur is simply too cute, that it helps keep them company, or that it's more of a comedic relief. But here's the thing, despite all of those being valid reasons, people still send Kerfur out in their place, despite clearly knowing that it's probably going to fail. And there's a reason for that, because Kerfur actually has two different forms. But before we get into that, I'd just quickly like to thank everyone for watching. Many of you probably don't know this, but I've actually been uploading to this channel for about a year now. And over the course of this year, the content I've been making has changed quite a bit. But thanks to you, I finally found the kinds of videos I want to keep on making. And we're actually so close to 10,000 subscribers now that it would honestly really make my day if you helped us reach this goal. Near your base, you can find a locked up underground bunker, and through a small gap just behind its entrance, you can actually see the keycard needed to open it, sitting just out of reach. Luckily, if you choose to purchase a hook from the shop, you can manage to fish it out. As we make our way inside, we'll soon come across a book, and upon opening it, we learn about a strange Kerfur model named Kerfur-Omega. But more importantly, we learn that this model is made up of 5 different parts: the head, torso, pelvis, arms, and legs, each of which requires many different materials to craft, including several parts which the owner of this book seemingly scattered throughout the array for someone else to find. But one of the more important ones, the AI module, requires you to swim to the bottom of a lake, the same lake we talked about earlier, which, if you remember, is home to an unsettling monster. At this point, you're probably wondering why anyone would go to such lengths to hide these parts. And the game does answer this, because on the last page you read the following. And most importantly, be careful around this creation. Who knows, maybe it is as unstable just like its previous generation. Not only did the author of this book hide all of those parts for a reason, but they specifically chose to hide this AI module in a locked safe at the bottom of a lake. Combining this with the fact that near it is also a skeleton within a boarded up locker, who knows, maybe this skeleton was once that same author. Maybe this was them ending their life because their creation somehow scared them. All of which seems to further suggest that they didn't want anyone to build another Kerfur-Omega. The question is, why did they leave out instructions then? But first, it's time for a building montage. Clink clank clunk clink 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 clunk clank clink 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 clank clunk dun 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 dun. Introducing Kerfur-Omega, now with 40% less suicidal pathing. It carries your groceries, fixes your servers, and never once complains. Call 1-800-FOREVER-COMPANION to place your order today. Side effects may include increased attachment, decreased personal space, and in rare cases, the feeling something staring back from behind the screen. Remember how the book said to be careful around Kerfur-Omega? Well, as it turns out, you should. In its base form, there's already an event where Kerfur randomly powers on and leaves into the woods. If you follow it, you will find that it has deactivated itself, and right next to it you will find a big chunk of meat. Occasionally, you might also find what looks to be a broken down Kerfur model buried in the ground beside it. Either you dig it up or wait 30 minutes for it to do it on its own. And as a result, you will face an aggressive abandoned Kerfur model that's trying to kill you. This oddly seems to suggest that Kerfur was somehow trying to get the player killed. And in its original form, there's good reason to believe that that's what it's trying to do. But Omega Kerfur acts a whole lot differently, in that there's a chance that whenever you quickly attempt to turn around and face it, just for a split second, its face turns almost horrific. This event is actually what made me look into this topic in the first place, and what I found is that no matter what, Kerfur's head will always seemingly be able to track you, and unlike its usual face expression, this creepier one didn't actually look at the in-game character. It was staring directly at us, the player behind the screen. All of which should honestly make you more terrified of Kerfur than it did before. But as it turns out, this whole quest to get Kerfur-Omega is something almost every player does, because they still want Kerfur-Omega regardless. And maybe that's partially due to the fact that it's actually able to properly help you now, or at least somewhat. But I also think there's something else going on here too, because unlike your typical horror game, Voices of the Void scares the player through paranoia, the fear that because nothing is happening, you believe something is. And one of the only ways the game helps you remain calm is by giving you a routine, which in a sense, Kerfur's automation helps reduce the amount you're involved in. And this has its benefits, but as a result, you're also more prone to paranoia. In a way, Kerfur works similar to automation systems in other games. Stardew Valley might sound like a weird comparison, but in it, you're tasked with growing crops to sell for a profit. Every day, you have to water these crops, but eventually you unlock sprinklers which do this task for you. The benefit here is that you're thus given more time to explore other parts of the game, such as going mining or fishing. Voices of the Void only really does this by giving you the chance to instead explore more of its map. However, at the point you finally unlock Kerfur-Omega, you've already gotten pretty familiar with this world. And so, instead of going exploring or following your routine, you're forced to come up with something else, something that in turn encourages your feelings of paranoia, because you have nothing to distract yourself with and give you comfort. But actually, you do have something, or should I say someone, Kerfur, though some of its actions seem to suggest that it doesn't actually give you comfort in the way you might think. Because take a look when it's actually repairing a server. Repairing a server isn't exactly a delicate task, but every time Kerfur-Omega does this, it strikes an oddly deliberate, almost seductive pose, which might just be this game's developer putting in a joke, but maybe it's also Kerfur flirting with the player to get them to like it. And other parts of the game also seem to encourage this. Later on, for example, different aliens begin to visit the array, most of which are actively trying to harm you, but luckily you can just let Kerfur fix the servers outside of the base for you. That is until one of those aliens attacks Kerfur. Now, unlike regular Kerfur, Kerfur-Omega won't break when damaged. Instead, it will simply collapse, and the parts used to make it stay there for you to recollect and use to reassemble it. Yes, you could still fix the servers on your own, but at this point you also already have enough points, that being this game's in-game currency, and plenty of other ways to continue earning them. So you might be wondering, what reason do you actually still have to keep Kerfur-Omega around then? Well, companionship, because there's actually still something you do need to do outside of your base, that being traveling to one, if not more than one of the free transformers found at the far ends of the array whenever your base experiences a power outage. Now, Kerfur-Omega could technically also go and fix those transformers for you, but once again, that risks it falling apart, meaning if you don't want to end up being alone, traveling with Kerfur-Omega alongside you ends up being the best alternative. I mean, this whole Kerfur flirting to make you dependent on its companionship thing makes even more sense when you consider that there's an event that lets players hand Kerfur a written marriage proposal just to see it hand one back. And remember that pose Kerfur strikes when fixing a server, and that creepy stare that follows you no matter where you go, both were aimed at the same person. You, not Kel. Because here's the thing, I don't think Kerfur-Omega is trying to give companionship to the player. I think it's trying to solely give it to Kel. I mean, think about it. By the player controlling Kel, they're also actively choosing to avoid putting them in danger, because in that same way, they're also avoiding that danger for themselves. But to Kerfur, all it sees is someone else controlling Kel, and by extension, not giving them the chance to protect Kel instead. And yes, I'm implying Kerfur-Omega has grown obsessively possessive over Kel. And if you also recall, earlier on, we found a skeleton at the bottom of the lake, which might have been the author of the Kerfur-Omega manual. Because maybe they built their own Kerfur-Omega the exact same way you did, and grew attached just the same. Maybe the events that put you in danger weren't meant to eliminate Kel, but rather eliminate you as the player. In a way, Kerfur raised you to grow dependent on them, also it could disregard you the moment it didn't need you anymore, allowing Kerfur to, while lifeless, take care of Kel's body all on its own. And somehow, even knowing all of this, you'll probably still let it comfort you nonetheless.